I don't know what that gets you,
Right.
but there are these little
Lawsuit.
nuances in there that I don't know how they're being.
And we haven't established like a real issue.
So Mark, first of all, thank you. I know this is almost like an extracurricular activity for you. I don't believe this was identified as a priority given other competing priorities this year, so thank you for writing all this stuff down. I mean, what it sounds like to me is that we have a situation in which there are a lot of different levers we can pull, a lot of different enforcement options, some of which are extremely time consuming, some of which are complaint based. And I mean, from my perspective, I'd still like to look into them, but I don't know how it looks from a resourcing and staffing perspective here, given the fact that it sounds like a lot of work. So I mean, you know, my head is still in the same place, but I think that there's a lot of work to be done on this, just to figure out how to move forward with it. I think it would take a lot of thought, take a lot of work with our village attorney. So I guess I'm just kind of rambling without a real solution, but I kind of see, I see some of the issues here that are coming through as you talk.
Yeah, and I agree that I would be, of course, open to always looking at something, but we do have to remember this was not brought by staff. This was, you know, a board member saying, item for future consideration. So just like a lot of the things that come up at the village level, like this might be something that could go on the priority list, or we can talk about doing prioritization next year. Because it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't driven by staff, or, you know, with one or two members of the community. Which doesn't mean it's not important, or something that we should explore, but we all know what the priority list looks like, and what we have and have not gotten through in the last 2 years. And again, and I understand DNC 2020 is coming, which, you know, again, we can speculate all the live long day about how all of a sudden, you know, the whole village is going to be, you know, full of all Airbnb, and
We're all out of here.
and also I'm just going to go back about the whole Airbnb, and I'm not trying to support Airbnb here, anyone who does regulate, but this organization, just like, you know, a lot of the places, you have to, it's kind of onerous as far as registering, and then there's a whole, it's not an anonymous situation, so, and there are reviews and there are other things, so it's not like, so the easier thing for people would do to get around this would be to not go through an organization like Airbnb or whatnot and just, you know, rent out a room in their house willy-nilly here and there, collect some money. There's no vetting system that necessarily has to go on, you know, no driver's license or verified identification or anything like that. So, I don't know, that's a false dichotomy here. We're talking just right now about short terms in general. I know we have it on our books, you know, from who knows when that ordinance was written. I guess fundamentally, you know, it's a question of, you know, what do we feel that the residents of this village can support? Do we allow, do we feel that there's appetite to allow for there to be Airbnb? And I don't know how many currently are in existence, but.
Well, and we can't prohibit them.
No, well, the short term, we could, you know, do some stuff, things fewer than 7 days. But and also, but I'm just saying that it's not a problem right now that we are aware of community-wide. Okay, sure, just like anything, you know, how do I say this? Every decision that you make, you're gonna have people that support and people that don't support it, right? And everything that goes on in the community, if someone puts up a fence, some of the neighbors hate it, some of the neighbors like it. So you can't please everyone, and I understand that people who are adversely affected by these situations do have recourses, and they should use those recourses in order to deal with it, which it sounds like some have. And, but I wouldn't want to prohibit this for everyone if, you know, and I've only heard from, I'd like to have more discussion around this as a village if we are going to really get hardcore restrictive on what, you know, especially because we do not have any hotels in Shorewood. That is a problem for when people do have people coming from out of town.
And I do think we have some common ground. I mean, I think that, I just, from my perspective, I need to know what this looks like in order to try to move it forward. But I'm very sensitive to the fact that we have about 500 priorities that we want to track down. So it's something where I'd like to keep the ball rolling on something like this. You know, I just don't know what that looks like. You know, again, with all the other stuff we're doing, you have to prioritize and pick. We can't, you can't work 24 hours a day. But again, my feeling is that this is something that I think we want to just take, we want to run down, and we want to make sure that we've considered the options. I just, at this point, given your capacity, given the fact that you need to sleep and have a life, I also don't want to say, this is something that we need a memo next week on. And we want to fast forward this ahead. So, for me, the solution I would look to support would be something where, at the very least, we kind of keep the ball rolling. We start to think about what we can do in terms of studies, studying this, not studies.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. There are a couple of studies that are concurrently going on, especially in the CDA is looking at the housing study. So it does look like there will be some information potentially that could inform our decisions as far as something like this is concerned, no?
Yeah, I think I did mention it within the memo. There was a specific question for our housing consultant to determine whether, or to identify whether or not it's a problem in Shorewood.
Right.
And so that is one specific, bullet point within the scope that we're hoping to have some sort of professional answer on within the next 2 to 3 months.
Do we want to let that get to its conclusion and then bring this, say, we're gonna look at the housing study, we're gonna see what it concludes on this issue, and then if it says, oh my God, this is a burgeoning problem for Shorewood, we begin to think about fast tracking this. If they say, no, this is really confined to 2 houses, you have existing ordinances under which you can work to try to figure out how to address resident complaints, maybe we work under that framework.
I mean, that makes sense to me, quite honestly. The only issue with that is, I don't think it's an issue either, is, if that study wraps up in January and then all of a sudden we think we need to implement something about the DNC, that's probably not gonna happen. So if we make that decision, which I think makes a lot of sense, just given the heads up that implementing anything before that big event would be.
Yeah, I personally would not write an ordinance for one event.
I wouldn't either, and to that point, Summerfest comes every year. The Harley Davidson Fest brings tons and tons of people, including, and I know plenty of people in Shorewood that have our Airbnbs and rent Airbnbs and, neighbors, whatnot, so there are a lot of events that bring, I know the DNC is a special thing, again, it's only 4 days, 5 days, whatever, as well. But yeah, I wouldn't want to write an ordinance just for one event either. And I wouldn't want to make the conclusion that we are so afraid of, something like this, bringing in all this money to the city and to the Shorewood, that we're going to all of a sudden become the closed community that's not going to allow the businesses and others to capitalize on the fact that there is going to be a big audience of folks coming in. And I would also want it said in the memo if the business community and others have been notified as this. This is a big discussion. It's not just, we've got a complaint, let's write an ordinance. This will probably, you want to get the word out about if we don't allow Airbnbs or if we're going to be uber restricted, then I'd like to see the complaints that the board's going to get. And I guarantee it's going to be a lot more than 2.
I would, trustee Warren.
I'm still formulating my thought, sorry.
I mean, I'd kind of like to wrap this up unless there's something significant. I think that it makes sense. I would definitely support seeing how the housing study comes back, kind of checking our pulse at that point, and then deciding. Because I do think that it would be, to do it right, I think that it would be a big initiative. And it is not one of our priorities for 2020. And so I don't want to your point, it doesn't seem like it makes sense unless we get some indication from another source.
No, I think based on what Bart said, this is huge. I mean, as Trustee Bachhorst's pointed out, the impacts are huge on both sides. Mm-hmm. There's a ton of leverage you can pull. There's a ton of enforcement mechanisms, and frankly, the next step is the housing study to get our arms around the scope of the problem. So, I mean, part of the reason that we pay for a housing study is to address problems like this and figure out what we have, to drive ordinances and to drive solutions. So I think that that's the logical place where we next evaluate what we want to do with this. I also agree that you can't make a village ordinance that's supposed to last, into perpetuity based on one event. Now, it's a big event for Milwaukee, obviously, but you want to make sure that your policy and your ordinance is solid, whether or not that event was coming to Milwaukee. So you want to make sure that it's something you're comfortable with regardless of the event. So
So do we need to make a motion, or can we just give direction?
Let's just consider next steps of the, so we have to consider, we have to propose some next steps is what I think we have to do.
Correct.
Great. Would anybody like to make a motion in that regard? Take a
Well,
run at it?
there's a motion, or we could move to defer this discussion until after the results of the housing study come back.
Those-
That's viable options.
Say, so moved.
So moved. So moved. So all those in favor?
Wait, so it hasn't been seconded.
Oh, I thought
I said so moved.
Oh,
And then you
You-
said so
you
moved.
both.
Yeah.
Did you take my you can make it.
no, I would like to second your, and then I would like to eat my dinner.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
And Barb, just for clarity's sake, when is the housing study supposed to come back?
So the CEA is reviewing the timeline after meeting on Friday. The current timeline is by the end of the year. It might slip until January, depending on, they're going to go through revised schedule, but 2 to 3 months.
It's within 90 days, it looks like. And so it's a relatively short time horizon. This
Yep.
will be coming back to us. I just want
Yes.
to make sure that when we're talking, I just want to make sure that we're clear on the timeline before we go ahead.
Yeah, it should be soon.
Okay.
I'd like to, I was gonna say I'd amend my motion, and then I'd say defer discussion, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's coming back right after the housing study, but
It's going to come, yeah, I mean, we'll get it scheduled.
but that might be, we'll get a report from the village manager or from whomever, and then it would probably be incumbent upon the board to determine whether or not they want to bring this back for discussion.
Yeah, well, I'm okay with that. I mean,
The intent, my understanding from the discussion is that we would bring that information back to this standing committee. and say,
As a report?
Correct, the
Yep.
standing committee, here's what we found. And then assess what, if any, recommendation would come from there.
Okay, so that's, I don't know if I need to amend my motion, but just because this is on the agenda right now doesn't mean that we have to take action on it. And part of the action that we could take is to say that we are, just like we said, deferring potential discussion until after the housing study comes back. And then maybe we'll get a report and then we can determine if we want to go forward at that point.
all makes sense to me.
Right, this does not commit us to acting upon the report.
No, I as I've said, I'm open to this type of regulation, but I'm certainly not standing here committing to taking some sort of action one way or another. I think we need to see more and get the results of the report.
Right. So do you need to?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, we're fine.
Any other discussion?
Can I just, in 2 cents?
Yeah.
One of the challenging things about this topic is that unless the state changes, you're gonna be dealing with the same set of regulations that don't give you a whole lot of wiggle room to really do a lot of regulation altogether.
Right.
So we're also working in a circumstance where we've reduced the amount of enforcement, through the planning and development office
That's
to
right.
decrease, some of the regulation. And we don't have sufficient staff resources to approach this in the way that I think some people would expect or desire, So, I'll be interested to see what the housing analysis said, but right now, within the scope of planning and development, we don't have the resources to do something in addition to what we're doing now. And what I will say is that the process that we have identified and that Bart's worked collaboratively with the rest of the staff in the police department and the North Shore Health Department is a process that sets out a protocol for how we're going to channel these complaints if they are received. And it has been effective. It's not as timely as some, it doesn't meet the expectations of some individuals' timelines, but it does definitely, bring the issue forward and allows us to interact with it within the scopes of our organizations in the best way we can under the intent of what the state statute says. So I just want to applaud you for kind of coordinating that.
Oh, yeah, thanks for calling that out, because that was a big part of the, that was a big effort of yours, a few months ago, or whenever this first week of June, I believe. And so thank you for reminding us of that. And so I do think that the committee does need to acknowledge that we do currently have a protocol in place that does address complaints. And that, as we learned with the conversion therapy ban, it is very difficult when an entity passes something that can't be enforced. And so that is going to be a real issue. That is going to be a legitimate concern if we entertain the idea of an ordinance. So I like that Trustee Warren, I think that it is always good for the public to be open to looking at something, but I also like that we're being very practical about it and respectful of the prioritization. And also, we do need to acknowledge that there is a protocol in place, and that the complaints that came in really were the catalyst for creating that. And so now we have it. And again, I do think that when you pass an ordinance, if it's something that has been requested by the community, there is an expectation of a certain type of enforcement or scenario that may or may not be realistic, so.
Could I add to that? And thanks again. Yeah, thank you for all the work that you've done, and I really appreciate it. Two things. One is that I am happy to look at this, and maybe for a slightly different reason, or maybe complementary reasons, but I think that as far as I'm concerned, the ordinance, what we have on the books right now might be a little bit more restrictive than where society is going regarding short-term rentals, and was also probably created a long time ago when Shorewood was more envisioned of being a bedroom community, not a happening place where there are weddings and other things. You know, we have a lot of big events in Shorewood itself, and it's great. And it's I would love for us to have like a boutique or some kind of hotel or a place where people could stay so that they don't have to drive after all of these events. I mean, we have the concerts, we have the farmers market, we have so much within our village. But anyway, so I'm digressing slightly. But yeah, it is tricky when you do pass, you know, these local ordinances that are not enforceable, and that the state is, you know, has, what's it called, preempted our ability to do so. And I don't know if this is happening yet in the state of Wisconsin, and I don't know to which degree, and I'm not saying that we couldn't look at this because of this, but I know that Airbnb has sued municipalities across the country for enacting certain kind of enforcements at the local level. And it may have not been the same situation that we have in the state of Wisconsin. You know what I'm saying, that the state has superseded or has preempted our ability to regulate. But so it's, you know, it's tricky, but that's not a reason not to look at it, of course, just because it suit other people.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that ties into the point that this is a heavy lift. I mean, just in terms of how you design it, who enforces it, making sure that you're on all fours legally, it's a heavy lift. So you want to have as many inputs as you can before you move forward with that heavy lift to determine whether you want to actually go forward, and if you do go forward, how you're going to make it look. So
yeah, and interesting, we do have a really a test pilot, we'll just say, of if we wanted to take the flip side to the DNC and say this is an opportunity to see, you know, how our village would respond with Airbnbs being allowed when there's a major event like this, a national event right here within 4 miles of our municipality. So, not saying that risk-averse people would be very happy with that one, but again, these are not, you have to remember these are folks that are using their credit cards and their licenses, and they're coming and they're staying in town, and probably not for the reason to destroy the village. So, I'm done.
Let's wrap this up.
Yeah, we have a motion.
We have a motion and a second, and we've had lots of discussion.
Yes.
So let's take a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So that passes 3-0. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to adjourn the meeting.